What is your most optimistic mindset for these times?
Well, when I've been thinking about what fuels my optimism, I think they're quite challenging times to feel optimistic in. But what I found that I returned to again and again was love. Love fuels my optimistic mindset. And I don't say that in a kind of flaky, floaty, or any particular fixed idea of what love is. But I do believe there is this very reliable kind of state to return to that will always nurture optimism. And for me, it is connected to the heart. And it is about being able to choose to return, or being open to returning to this place of softening in the heart and making heartfelt relationships. And I was thinking that often there is like a perceived lack and woundedness, basically often from a perceived lack of love, a lack of self-love, a lack of love to others, a lack of love from others, a lack of appreciation, a lack of worth, all these different kind of threads and textures and sort of subtle qualities of the experience of embodied love. I don't think that's what love is, but that hint towards love, that though that kind of distilled in its most purest sense, I believe the optimism comes from the love. I believe in quite simple ways, we can work with that to bring optimism by working, taking it on a more sort of other level where we might be working with kindness, little acts of random kindness. So for me, it's kind of like, I think I find myself in a very optimistic mindset when I feel like my heart softens. I have an embodied experience of that. I feel something in my body. We might say a release of oxytocin, and that just lifts my mood where it really doesn't matter what's happening around me, how many rules, who I can and can't see. And it could be a music that could do that. It could be another human being. It often for me could be nature, that would just inspire a movement really that opens the heart, and then this optimism and well-being kind of pour forth. A very, very abundantly creative place, I would say, where anything can happen and miracles abound. Okay. And I think it's just reliable through time. I go away from it for 55 years. I might trot off here and there looking for, optimism or whatever. But for me, I think love is the absolute sort of ground of it in my, being here on the earth. That's the truth I come back to.
What have you done to realize your life's vision?
I remember a time when I was about 6 or 7, I think, and I was coming out of school and my mum was picking me up. And I remember trying to get an emotional temperature from my mum. I was saying to my mum, are you in a good mood or a bad mood? I don't really mind which, but I just kind of need to know, and then we can kind of go forward from there. When I reflect back on that, I see a little girl who was always trying to make meaning and understanding of human relationships. I come from a family of 7 kids. I have 5 brothers and a sister. I've done blended families and step families and joint families and half siblings. And I feel like I've done a lot of different, mix-ups around sort of family groupings. And there's been a lot of relationships in that. And I think I was always trying to understand love, really, I will say, connecting with my first answer, through the form of relationships. Because I think I felt like love is quite a big thing. It's quite hard to actually define what is love. I mean, there's so many ways we could go with that. But for me, there's something about human relationships which really gesture the sort of fabric and the sort of textures and colors of the world of love through, our embodied practice in the world. I've done many years of really putting that vision out there, I guess I would say, and working with that by working with birth, because I think I was trying to go back to the earliest of the earliest prenatal stuff, and that pregnancy and birthing and postpartum was a way to try and hold that new baby, that new being, in a sort of as coherent and empathetic field as I could support. I think working with people at that time kind of was definitely a living of my vision, because I think, again, if the relationships are kind of, if we weed and garden the relational field, we keep it freer, to experience the love and to have a feeling of that, which certainly helps being on the planet. I think it's easier to feel connected, and people feel generally well and safe when they're well connected in their lives and in their relationships in a healthy way, than if they're very isolated. I mean, obviously some people choose to be out of relationship quite literally, but even then we're relating to ourselves and our environment and the world to some extent. So, and I think then through time that's kind of developed and moved on for me, is working a lot these days with relationships. And again, I will say that I feel like relationships give the kind of texture and the color of the shape of our lives. We're held in our relationships, and they can be quite an embodied gesturing of this sort of big luminous thing called love. We can really distill it down into quite pragmatic kind of ways and gesturings. And I think that as I've traveled further through my life, I'm 55 now, and I don't do day-to-day parenting with children, for example, because my kids are adult. I've really been on a real sort of renewal of vision, I want to say, which I think is important as well. Transition through one's lives to reflect and re-evaluate and kind of come to a truthful place again. And what I loved about this latest transition, which I would say is the last couple of years, I've moved out of the city into the country and I live on a bit of a project, is that I've really included myself in the well-being of all this curiosity around how we hold ourselves in the shape of our lives. And that feels like a deepening sense of embodiment for me, where I can live my vision of my bit of what I offer the world is in some ways working relationally to help people to really get themselves into relationships that sustain and nourish them. I work a lot with couples and families and stuff, and parents and teenagers, and any gardening that I can help people to do in that place, I feel, that's my offering. But the fact that I've now created a place where I do it, not all the time, but sometimes in a cabin, where I live, and I can choose to really inhabit that space and burn wood in a way that I like, and, make a nice fire and nurture people freely, feels like I'm really able to just be me as I am in the environment that I choose to be in, offering what is really of value to me. So I think I really have taken a lot of responsibility for my life. And I feel like the commitment in a way to my authentic self has meant that it would be difficult for me to not follow my nose of curiosity and work and live and teach from what is truthful for me. So in some ways, I feel like I've been extremely lucky in that. I mean, I think it would be maybe difficult for me to know how to do it differently. So I'm not sort of championing that as this is the way to do it, but more that this is the way that Dom does it. But at 55, I feel like, ooh, I kind of landed in a place where I can't quite believe that I'm here, because I love what I do and I'm passionate and I'm learning all the time and I'm making a good living and I'm living in a beautiful environment. And I'm feeling a lot of gratitude in that, back to the heart again. So I feel like there's this beautiful sort of nourishment that includes me now too. I think often I would say that I take inspiration in that and practice in that in gardening, which I'm not a gardener, but I live with a gardener, and I've lived with a gardener for a long time. And I think that at this time, nature has a lot to teach us in this place. I just think the humility of nature, you do your little seedlings, you put them all out there, and then along come the slugs and they're gone. But then the other side of nature, you're trotting along through your garden, somehow a little seed blew in the wind or fell out your pocket, and you've got a flurry of wildflowers that practically take you swooning to your knees. And it feels like a wonderful metaphor for love and for relationship. So, I feel like nature is really helping to deepen me into this place.